episode of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Today's episode is on second chances and practicing life. This particular topic falls into the topic of trust and what trust actually is. Now, anytime I'm working with somebody, or even in my own world, in my own experiences, when I feel challenged by something specific, I'll ask myself if there's any specific or major tenets that I violated, or is there something like a tenet of my core values, and then I'll look at specific descriptors, right? Like to say the word trust. Well, define trust. Without going to the dictionary, put it into the best words that you possibly can. Write it down, and then check what it means in the dictionary, and see how there may be some differences between your definition and what it is defined by, with, Webster or wherever you get your definition from. So, second chances. Redemption, fall into corrective behavior, fall into what's acceptable for somebody else, whoever the person is granting the second chances. And this goes for all kinds of things. And the thing that I find that is that how we as people, or as we say species, how we hold such hyper criticisms when our emotions get involved, especially for something that we ourselves may have already have done, or will do, or are doing currently. It's pretty interesting to me how we protect specific aspects and attributes about ourselves, specific areas like our emotional self. Sometimes we become so incredibly guarded to protect that thing that we spend more time on how to defend and how to attack whatever might, instead of allowing that emotional state to develop. It's a fight to keep it in place, so that you may forever be 8 years old at a maturity level whenever it comes to dealing with specific people in your life, or certain types of relationships. It's interesting to me how a lot of our fights are to keep things in place. But then again, why wouldn't we want something in place whenever we like patterns, we prefer to seek out secure opportunities for success, which, why wouldn't we? Some people are hyper-focused on success, and they negate values from failure. We're all practicing life. And as I recently put on my social media about, you're not now, nor have you ever been, responsible for how someone perceives you or what their expectations of you are, so long as you have always been honest and true to yourself and true to that relationship, in the sense that you have expressed yourself as best that you can. Because everyone has their own play. Right? Everybody's got their own thing that they're doing, and with that play, we have people that are looking to put certain people into starring roles, and those starring roles are not always the ones that the person wants to be in. Right? Now, think about the last time somebody had like a huge gripe about one person. And that seems to be all they talk about, is how incredibly bad that one person is. But that person's playing a leading role in that person's play at the time. So whoever the person that's negative, or the bad one that's being talked about, is playing a role in the person's life that's talking about them. Now, there's a lot of complexity and potential reasons behind somebody doing something like that and creating such a play, but it's why any play at all would exist, is to draw an audience. Okay? It's to draw an audience and to tell a story. A lot of times they're just fucking stories. They're actually not what happened as its true reality. It's the interpretation the person has on it and whatever they use in order to gain more of what they're looking for, which is either the attention from others or the approval, support, just validation from others. But that's one side of it, and that's whenever people are just out of control, they're reckless, is they just go around and just, create as much drama as possible because they have a void within themselves that's not being filled, so they're using that superficial tactic that is also character assassination and damages, other people's relationships that may not even exist yet, or create relationships for somebody that isn't theirs, right? It's your relationship with the person. So if you've never met the person before and they tell you about this person, you're formulating a relationship with that person based off of the one that's talking's expression of it and their interpretation. And who's a greater witness for somebody, right? It's like you're the best witness for somebody else directly, not somebody else telling you what you're supposed to believe about somebody specific. Because that makes for a very bad witness, right? Or it's a big gap of communication and expression that's being missed because now it's through interpretation. So that's one side of it. The other side is as we're practicing life. We're practicing life. Every single day you're practicing life. If you're trying to make a lot of money, and let's say you want to retire at a certain age, let's say 50, whatever, you just want to retire at a certain age, and you have a specific money, a set financial goal. And we'll say, just for the conversation, the set financial goal is $1 million in the bank. So $1 million in the bank, you can retire, and you have whatever your plan is there. But that's your goal. So you're working towards that. And every day you go to work, let's say you're making $125,000 a year. You're going to work every single day, and you're accumulating whatever you can save in order to achieve that goal of $1 million in the bank, or in an investment, however you want it. You're improving on a daily basis, so long as that improvement is measured by you saving, and that your savings is measured by actions to save, things that you do to reduce spending and to increase savings. That's a process of you practicing life into your financial well-being, your financial goal. Because your financial well-being is associated with your financial goal and whether or not you're on track with that, to a large extent. So now we're all practicing life. We weren't born with a manual that tells us exactly how to do everything. We have old books, ancient books, that tell us specific values and specific values that'll help us be more well-suited in society, like the Bible, religious doctrine, things like that, can give you more of everyone is agreeing to behave a certain way based off of the structure that this particular thing is taught, and therefore we can get along better in society because we're all playing a game that is very, very similar, which is awesome. But we really don't have more than that to help us. We have our mentors, our guides, our guardians, our parents, our guardians, our guides, our mentors, their authorities to who they, abide by. They also offer that kind of support. And it all gets witnessed by the child who's understanding how to play a role in life. But we don't really have something that says this is 100% the best way of doing something. One of the reasons for that is everything has so much situational value that can change the way that we believe something should happen, because it doesn't always fit because of how many variables can be at play at the time of the thing's need, whatever the situation is. So, we're practicing. Constantly practicing. You're going to practice in a lot of realms. Practice in the realm of relationships, intimate, relationships, romantic relationships. You'll practice that in business. You'll practice it in a lot of places. There's going to be emotional connections that you make, and there'll be emotional expectations that are made. In business, you'll have an emotional expectation. You just do not interfere with my process in order to earn more money. And I will support you in the environment so much so that at least I don't interfere with you at minimum, or at maximum I directly am part of what you're doing directly, and you and I, working diligently, will find success in a business setup. And if you betray the person by not living up to what the stated work ethic and the amount of work is put out there, then you can have the sensation of, well, now I have to work extremely hard, and I believe that you're not going to work as hard often, or as often as you feel fit, or whatever it is, that's had you not do the job, and the other person had to pull your slack, or the deadline was missed, or the bonuses were lost, or something affected that other person's ability to earn that money that their objection or the objective was. And it's not always just money. Sometimes it's the satisfaction of doing the job, but often you get paid for the job, so there's going to be that value that is consistent. Now, in romantic sense, most people go into relationships without declaration other than the bulk or category declarations. And a category declaration is relationship. What does that mean? Well, you've gone through life picking up pieces that tell you what a relationship is. A relationship is, and then you fill in the blank, monogamy. A relationship is being attentive. A relationship is making the other person feel good, or that you feel good being around that person. You'll have all these little pieces that kind of facilitate when you start looking in at the relationship. When you start looking in at yourself and how you feel in relationships, you'll start to identify these pieces that have kind of been put together, Frankenstein together, if you will, or Frankenstein's monster, if you will. It's all these little pieces that fit, that you say that's the kind of thing that I want. Most people put all of the good stuff they want in a relationship on the front end and say this is what defines a relationship for me. When you start doing this work, you'll find that it is almost always 100% pleasant. It's almost always 100% of the desirable without the bitterness of it. And relationships should have fights when fights are appropriate. Not inappropriate, but when they're appropriate. Fights are conditioning. It's like going to the gym and working out. It does have value like that, because you're going between two people and learning what it is that's that may have some different viewpoints on situations. You're like, what, I don't agree with that, and now you get to argue about it. Doesn't mean you're arguing as if you're gonna, like, one person's gonna win, the other one's gonna lose, and with that win and loss is one gloats and the other one sobs. It's not that, right? Not if you're going in the healthy direction, because the healthy direction is creating true solution and recreating opportunity from what that resolution has given opportunity, or given the promise of. So you take something that you two don't agree, or however many people's involved, since modern relationships are becoming more prevalent. Modern relationships, and I won't go down and far into that, but just know that modern relationships have a lot of different variables that the traditionals don't. Doesn't mean they're better, doesn't mean they're worse. Again, we're all practicing life to find out how it fits best for us. So if you have a subject that two people have different or opposing views on, or just differing views, from that argument, you create the fertile soil for the next opportunities of that relationship, the future of it. Two people now have an understanding. If you don't bring up something that upsets you, the other person may not understand it upsets you. They may not pick up on cues, and the silent or body language cues that are often, stated in the drama of relationships when people are expressing how upset they are that they weren't treated a certain way. Well, it was obvious. I gave him this look, or I gave her this look, and they didn't pick up on it, and it's so common sense or obvious. If you're doing that to your partner, it just sounds to me like you want to win. You don't really care about connecting because you weren't willing to share what was there. And if you were too intimidated for it, that's that ash or the soil, the fertile soil that I'm talking about. The conflict should take place enough that you can communicate opportunity for growth versus drinking some slow poison that'll eventually kill the relationship. Passive aggressiveness is a trait that often kills relationships. And that's what I'm talking around with this is, people have that passive aggressive value. We're told at a young age, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Well, that creates conflict avoidance. And conflict avoidance isn't healthy because it makes people spiteful and resentful and just makes people all of these things that, are undesirable in the relationship, and people typically grow to dislike who they are in those situations. And usually in a relationship, when somebody starts to dislike who they are, that is a death spiral for the relationship. I don't like who I am in this relationship. Well, relationship is the lowest common denominator to the person in that statement as far as their personal awareness on average. And they're going to say to themselves, well, since I don't like who I am in this, I need to get out of the relationship so that I can like who I am. And then they move towards that, by drinking more poison over time. And there's more complexity to it when you get into the abuse cycles and the therapeutic concepts of relationships when it comes to the unhealthy therapy, if you will, the abuse of another to feel, to vent, if you will, or offload stress onto your partner because you don't have any other method to get it out. That's the only way it seems to satisfy you. But that's another subject. That's for further conversation another time. But so we're all practicing life. We're going to do things that don't always line up with the other person for what they understand. And with that, it's the second chance comes in discussing it and breaking down whatever it is as communication. And I take a great deal of appreciation for my development in communication. I've put a lot of work into developing my abilities to communicate. And I am by no means at 100%. I'm not even freaking close to that with my my ability to communicate. And I've learned this hard lesson recently that I am not even close to what I thought my abilities to communicate was. But I put in a lot of effort and continue to, so that there's less and less miscommunication. But there's also the degree of forgiveness for yourself, first off, that if you didn't communicate effectively, forgive yourself to the best that you can, because often we'll carry a burden even if you did 100% of what you can, is 100% measured by your capacity at the time, not by the capacity of the retrospect, like where you're at looking back at it, because that's a common thing that we seem to beat ourselves up for and then get hypercritical, and that makes us want to get out of the game instead of participate. Well, when working or when being in a conversation with other people or looking back at things you've done in the past, we have too much of a habit of being hypercritical. But anyway, all right. So second chances happen; they're good. You want to give yourself that, and then secondly, if somebody else has done something, that could very well be something that, even though at the moment emotionally you don't see how you're connected to the issue, that the other person's looking or seeking a second chance, you may not necessarily see where you were part of that, and where you have responsibility because you're emotionally blocked because of whatever the thing is that's upset you. Discussion, if you would like. Put comments at you next time. These parts of life are not always easy. It really does take something. If you want to have an extraordinary life, you have to do extraordinary things, and sometimes those extraordinary things are really looking in at you so that you can develop yourself to want more opportunities in your current reality, or your current environment, so your reality expands to more perspectives. And the other is, if you do have to do in order to move, you have to work on it. So work on yourself and then work on the world. Don't work on the world and expect it to adapt to you. Let's work on ourselves and then work on the world. So it's not always easy and get sticky, but stick with me. Oh, this is the this is what's worth time and worth your life. So, all right, till next time. Search out Everett Brochures, and this is Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. See ya.